right. Well, good morning, everyone. If you're new, my name is Mark Lohman, one of the pastors here on staff. So glad that you are here. Story time. I love story time. In my early 20s, August 2009, two close friends and I, we were going camping. And camping in the middle of nowhere, like wilderness style, not with like an RV or trailer or anything like that. We're using an actual tent, go figure. And we're on the eastern Sierra Nevadas. If you're familiar with Mammoth, we're not too far out from Mammoth. And earlier that day, we had heard rumors that there was a bear in our area. And we never saw it, but just people saying, oh, hey, be careful, there's a bear out, whatever. Like, okay, great. And so we go through with our thing that day. We have a fire at night. Put the fire out. There's still some hot coals in the bottom of it, and you'll know why I'm sharing that. But you can't see anything. And then we go, my two friends and I, into our tent. And it's a large tent. We got lots of room to kind of move around and stuff. And so there we are. We go to sleep. And if you've ever been camping, like in the middle of nowhere, it's really dark. Like pitch black dark. Right? The type of dark that, like, if you put your hand in front of you, you can't see it. All right? So, go to bed. Three of us, including me. I'm actually in the middle. There's one of my friends to my left, one to my right. And a couple hours later, I don't know, I didn't have a watch on or anything, but it's probably 1, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. And I wake up. I'm a very sensitive sleeper. And I wake up, and I hear this noise, like probably, I don't know, maybe 30 yards away, like a jostling in the bushes. And I'm just like, what in the world is that? And then I notice, and I'm the only one up right now, that it's getting closer. Like it's like approaching us. And I realize, okay, this isn't a bear. This sounds like three guys. Again, it's pitch black, can't see anything. And so I'm sitting up and I'm really attentive. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what is going on here? And I start to hear these questions from these guys. Do you have your knife? You guys are laughing. It's not funny. One of them says, do you know where he's at? When's the last time you saw him? These are the things I'm hearing. And like I can't see in front of me, but right before my eyes, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to die tonight? Like, there's three guys coming. They got a knife. They're looking for a he. They're approaching us. By this time, like, I honestly think they're like 15, 20 feet away. They're in our campsite. And so all I have on me is like a little like pocket knife. And I just get out my pocket knife with like the 1-inch blade. And I'm sitting up there and I'm just like, I'm ready. One of my best friends, his name's Adam. Adam at this time wakes up, pops up. Now he can't see me, but he looks my direction. He's probably like 4 feet from me. And out loud, Adam says, Mark, why are you outside? And I'm like, dude, shut up. Like, because I'm like, there's these predators coming. They're coming to raid us. They're going to kill us. They're going to take our stuff. All I have is a white Toyota Corolla to get away, and that's not going to work. And so I don't know where he's at, but I just kind of like swing at him to like get him to shut up. So we're listening to the predators. Now, they heard Adam, Mark, where are you at? And right after, it scares one of the three guys outside, and he trips. We didn't know what he tripped over, but apparently he tripped into the fire pit with the hot coals. And this guy screams. And then I hear, the bear's not here. He's somewhere else. And I realize in this moment, these guys are drunk. And they're going and they're looking and they're hunting for the bear. nothing to do with us. And I lost a backpack that was near the fire pit that got burnt. Moral of the story: nothing good happens in the dark. Nothing good happens in the dark. Humor aside, there's this really fascinating theme in the scriptures that's just woven throughout from Genesis to Revelation. And it's this contrast of light and darkness, of day and night, of good and evil. And it's a contrast and a metaphor that we use still today. But for the Jewish people, this was a dominant worldview. They very much saw things as light and darkness. I mean, literally, the opening verses in the scriptures, Genesis 1, is that the author tells us that darkness is over the surface of the deep. The earth is formless and void. And then Yahweh, the God of Israel, brings light out of darkness. And he begins to create. And so for Israel, light stood for God's creative power, but it also stood for his wisdom, his knowledge, his guidance, his presence. And it guided them where they should go in life. Light was a good thing, darkness was a bad thing. And if you've been here the last couple of weeks, this is the third week of kind of a newer series at this point. We're going through the Gospel of John. And John's really unique in that he strategically placed 7 I am statements that Jesus makes. Jesus says, I am, and then he puts in a new phrase. And what John wants us to see is he wants us to see really clearly who is Jesus. And so we're so clever that we titled this series, Jesus Is, right? So last week, Pastor Brock, he gave us the first phrase. Jesus says, I am the bread of life. This morning, you can kind of tell what's coming now. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. So, if you have a Bible, John chapter 8, verse 12, we have the free orange Bibles underneath the chairs in front of you. That is yours to keep. If you don't have a Bible, no questions asked. John 8, verse 12, page 730 in those. Here's what we read this morning. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. And whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. That's it. That's all we're looking at this morning. One verse, John 8:12. This is incredibly common. I mean, most of us probably have heard this verse before. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. But this is a highly profound and clever thing that Jesus is doing, and we're going to find that out. Jesus, he's talking to the Pharisees, who are the religious leaders in the first century world. And Jesus, he's at the temple. And he tells them, let me read it again. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Now, as is always the case with Jesus, he's not just saying this haphazardly, accidentally, randomly. No. Jesus knows exactly what he's doing here when he says he's the light of the world. And the key to this whole passage, and I learned so much this past week in just studying this, is that you have to understand where Jesus is saying this. There's a context to his statement that he's making that just radically changes our understanding, and it reveals how shocking what Jesus is saying. Don't worry about turning there, and I would encourage you to read this on your own. Just don't assume that I'm the one saying this. John chapter 7, verse 14. We learned there, the chapter before, chapter 8, the context of where Jesus is teaching. And we learn in John 7:14 that Jesus is in the temple and he's preaching during a huge fall festival. Huge fall festival. And so this was party time. It was celebration time for the Jewish people. People came from all over the land and they headed to the capital city of Jerusalem where the temple was at. And this feast, this festival, it was called the Feast of Tabernacles. Other people call it the Feast of Booths. Kind of some odd names, and you're kind of like, whoa, like, what's up with that? Why is it called the Feast of Booths, Feast of Tabernacles? What's going on here? The whole point of this festival was that Israel was looking back into their past, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years earlier, when they were in Egypt and they were enslaved to Pharaoh. And God rescued them from Egypt. And then they spent time traveling in the wilderness, the desert. And we know that they spent 40 years doing that. And it got dark every night. And what they did during that time, as they're journeying these 40 years in the wilderness, is they lived in like mobile tents. Just honestly, kind of like what we do now with camping, minus glamping. You guys know who you are. Yeah, I see some smiles. So they're in these tents. That's why this is called the Festival of the Booths. And so what Israel will do during festival time, now at the time of Jesus, is to reenact that, to remember that, to celebrate that. They would make tents, and they would live in these tents during the festival time, which lasted for a week. I mean, this is actually like the original Coachella, right? If you get Coachella tents, okay, got some laughs there. This is like Coachella, but like thousands of years ago. And there's music, and there's dancing, and people are throwing like torches and all this stuff. And here's why they're doing it. To remember and to celebrate the 40 years that they walked through the wilderness in these tents. Here's the last thing you need to know. What guided them during the desert was God's presence. And what symbolized God's presence? It was a cloud by day and fire by night. And so early on, built into Israel's scriptures is this idea that light, that fire in the darkness stood for God's presence. You guys tracking? All right, we're going to put up a rendering here, a photo on the screen. All right, there's a representation. So this is like early Coachella, all right? Takes on a new meaning. So you got all the tents, all the booths, and you got the fire there in the middle. And wherever the fire went, wherever the light went, that's where Israel went. That was the light to their path. Without it, they couldn't see them. They didn't know where to go. All right. You're like, what in the world is he talking about right now? This all matters. I'm coming to it. Now, let's circle back. Let's go to John chapter 8. We're going to go back there. John chapter 8. If you scroll down to the end of this, in verse 20, we read a really, really, really important, almost like on the side comment. It's easy to gloss over, but every word matters in the scriptures. John 8:20 reads this. He, Jesus, spoke these words while teaching in the temple courts. All right, he's in the temple, near the place where the offerings were put. Why does that matter? It just changes everything. Jesus is in the temples, Feast of Booths, party time, music, celebration, torches going lighting up. And it says he's near where the offerings are put. We know historically that the offerings in the temple were right next to this area called the Court of Women. I don't have time to get into and explain what that means. It doesn't really matter. All you need to know for this is the Court of Women was where Israel, during festival time, would put up 75-foot candles. You know what a menorah is? Huge, huge, tall, literally 75 foot. And what was on those was lights, candles. Why did they do this? Well, the candles, the light, represented the fire and the darkness that led them through the desert. So this is a symbol for them. It's reminding them, oh yeah, remember the fire at night. Remember the light that symbolized God's presence that got us through the wilderness. Yeah, that's what these huge 75-foot candles symbolize. Two photos for you, 2 renderings. We'll put them up. So there's one, right? It's a rendering, not the actual thing, right? So there's one. We got another one. So here's the temple courts, right? Called the women of the court. Now here's the crazy thing. I don't even have time to get into this because it's a whole other sermon. We're actually going to do it during the summer. But the rumor was, historians tell us, that Jerusalem was lit up. And so you could be miles and miles away, but during this festival, you could see a light on a hill. Remember Jesus saying something about being a light on a hill? It's this. It's festival time. It's party time. And so picture music. Everyone's dancing. Guys have these torches and they're kind of like juggling them in the air. And you got these 4 large candles in there. And they're thinking about the Exodus and God's fire at night. And here's what I got to ask you guys. Where do you think Jesus is when he says, I'm the light of the world? He's right in front of these things. In the temple, where the offerings are, during the Feast of Tabernacles. And so we read this, and it kind of sounds like a cute, oh, Jesus is the light of the world, yeah, a glow stick, whatever. No, everyone knew it. If you're a first century Jew, you got this rabbi, this prophet, he's saying, I'm the light of the world, and right behind him are these huge torches and candles. And they put all of this together like this, and they knew exactly what Jesus meant. Jesus isn't claiming just to be smart or clever. He is that. But he's doing way more here. What Jesus is saying, and nobody would have missed this, Jesus is saying, I'm what those candles symbolize. He's saying, hey, you remember the whole light thing, the whole candle thing in the darkness? Yeah. I'm the one that's ultimately pointing towards that. He's saying, I'm the one that was with Israel in the desert, fire by night, guiding them, the light of the world. That's me. Jesus is saying, this party, this celebration is about me. It's not about the candles, because he's like, I'm the real candle. Love it. My. Do you see what's going on here? Jesus is saying, I'm God's presence, I'm Yahweh, and I'm with you for protection, for guidance with God's presence. And if that's the case, what he's saying is, I'm God. I'm the light of the world. And there's so many other things that are attached to this then. He's saying, hey, when Yahweh, the creator in Genesis 1, brings light out of darkness, he's like, yeah, I got that power. I got the creative power to bring creation out of nothing, to bring light out of darkness. And he's like, I can do the same thing in your life. I can bring light to your life and recreate you. I am the light of the world. Oh, we're just getting going. You guys ready this morning? Come on. We're going to do Feast of Booths in here. Put some tents up in here, some music, some dancing. It's like youth group style. All right, here's the next thing. Check this out. Jesus sneaks in like another round of cleverness right after this declaration. So he says, hey, I'm the light of the world. And then he follows it up with this. We usually skip this part. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. What does he mean? The Message, it's a paraphrase. Modern version puts it this way. No one who follows me stumbles around in the darkness. I provide plenty of light to live in. Now, I understand this passage in a new way that I've never understood. I always thought when Jesus said, I'm the light of the world, I kind of pictured it as like a stable, static light that you like look at, right? You like look at Jesus' glory, you look at the light, and those things are true, but in this, what Jesus is doing with this metaphor, check this out, this is a moving light. This is a moving light. And he's going with the desert, the wilderness example. That fire by night, it moved. And what did Israel do? They followed. And that was the way they got through. Jesus is saying, that same fire by night that guided you, that protected you, that was my presence, the same is true now. The question is Jesus the light of your world? Meaning, are you actively following him? Are you actively following this light as it moves? If you follow Jesus, he will light your path, your life, even though there will be darkness all around you. So the Christian life isn't peachy. You'll hear preachers, oh, yeah, follow Jesus, he'll bless your life, blah, 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 blah. And Jesus does bless. But following Jesus doesn't mean that life's going to be peachy. In fact, he says, pick up your cross and follow me. That's like horrible leadership, right? But he's like, no, actually, I'm going to make this hard for you. So there's darkness. But he's saying, if you follow me, I'm going to provide a light for you. Now, all right, we've done the hard work. What in the world does this look like practically today? What does it mean for Jesus to be the light of the world and for you to follow him? Right? Very abstract. Helpful metaphor. I didn't come up with it. Tim Keller, he's a retired pastor in New York City. He says, hey, you know, light is fascinating, like scientifically, if you think about light. And there are multiple dynamics to light, but he offers three, I think, brilliant examples of what light does. Here are three things that light does to each one of us. Light brings life. Secondly, it brings truth. And thirdly, it brings joy. Life, truth, joy. You need life to live, and that's kind of what life means. I'm going to show you, you need truth in your life. And hopefully you want joy, right? You don't want to be a moody person. These are vital elements to life because light brings vital elements. Here we go, real quick. First thing, light brings life. What do I mean? Think about plants. Think about trees. What happens if a plant or a tree doesn't get enough life or light? It dies. Now, unless, you're a hipster and you got all the succulents in your house and snake plants and they don't need light, and right, we can go down that route. But by and large, plants need light in order to live, to thrive. Light is essential to life. I mean, this is why 2 weeks ago, the prologue to John, the introduction, John 1:4, he says this about Jesus. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. Here's what I want to tell you. I want to preach to your heart right now. Do you feel like a dry, dead plant and you need some light? You feel like weathered, stale, empty, dry. You don't feel like you got life in you. Jesus says, I'm the light of the world. Let me bring light on you. Like, let me give you this living energy, this creative vibrancy. And so I just want to ask you this morning 3 questions here. Here's the first one. Are you receiving enough light of Jesus? Just like a plant, are you receiving light from Jesus? Secondly, Light brings truth. Light brings truth. And you're probably like, what in the world? Let's go back to my opening story. The problem with those three drunk, well, there's probably a lot of problems with the three drunk guys. All right? Yeah. One of the issues, though, was that it was completely dark outside. It's the middle of the woods. Fire's not going. The sun's not out. They don't have a flashlight. I didn't have a flashlight. There's no light. It's completely dark. And so what happens is the dude somehow trips into the fire pit and burns himself because there wasn't any light. If the sun was out, if it was daylight, or if he had a flashlight or whatever, he would have seen the fire pit. He would have seen it for what it is. There is physically a fire pit there. And so he's not going to drop into it. Light sheds truth on reality. Light brings visibility. It brings clarity. It illuminates. It exposes. That is what light does. And some of us here, I think you've believed lies about yourself or lies about other people in your family, and your vision and your understanding of reality has been darkened. And you need the light of Christ to shed reality into your situation, to shed truth into who you really are in and through the light and grace of Jesus Christ. Truth needs to be exposed. That's what light does. Light illuminates and exposes what reality is. And if you're in the dark, you can't see it. So second question, where do you need the light of Jesus to shine into your life? Where do you need truth to come in? Thirdly, light brings joy. My first year of seminary is graduate school for pastors. I was in Boston. My favorite professor, an amazing guy, completely vulnerable, shared with us the first day of class that he had what's called SAD. Never heard of this before. But SAD stands for seasonal affective disorder. And this is a proven thing. It's scientific. And so if you have SAD, if you're not exposed to the sunlight, you literally will encounter depression. Like it affects your emotions, your mood. And so what he had to do is he literally had to have light therapy. And so I remember going into his office, he would have these special lights in there, and he would have them at his house. Now this is Boston, right? So it's more wintry, snowy. SAD's not as common in Southern California. Now, I'll make a joke there. So he has this light, and so his skin has to absorb like light rays in order for his mood to be normal. Otherwise, he suffers with depression, with sadness, with discouragement. He has no joy. Light can affect your mood. Literally, scientifically. And this is why, a little bit different but related, right? So places like Seattle or Portland or Alaska that have really cold, dark weather, like literally, their suicide rates go up, right? In the winter, in the fall. It's very, very similar principle. Light affects your mood. Now, some of us, hopefully this isn't too cheesy, some of us got SAD here. Spiritual affective disorder. Now, that's not diagnosed from a psychologist, right? But from a pastor. Some of us got spiritual affective disorder. And you're moody, and you're not full of joy because you're not spending time with the light of the world shining on you. You're not following him closely. You're not receiving his light. And you feel the effects of it. You don't have joy. And your soul is craving. It was designed for the light of Jesus to bask in it. So I just want to ask you, do you want life? Do you want truth? And do you want joy? You don't have SAD. If you do, follow Jesus. He's the light of the world. One last thing. Some of us here, this was heavy on my heart this week in preparing for this. Some of us, this actually worries you. Here's why. You're afraid of being exposed. Man, that's good. You're afraid of being exposed, and here's what I mean. You're participating in some dark things. For that to be illuminated, for a light to shine on that, that is the last thing you want. That scares you, and it'll bring shame to you, and it'll expose you for what's really going on. Right? It's kind of like, if you think of, we don't want to think about this, but like a cockroach or a bat or something, right? And they live and they thrive in darkness. And what happens if you shine a flashlight on them? They run away. Like they're gone. Because they don't want to be exposed by the light. And some of you, this is what you're feeling right now. And you're nervous. You have anxiety. And I get this. On another realm, I'm not a person who likes a lot of light. It's skin cancer. I have a divot on my head. If I walk outside, I got to wear a hat. I got to wear a shirt, suntan lotion. I kind of provide my own light, even when it's dark out. Yeah, it's just for my... Here's the deal, though, on a serious note. Jesus bore darkness on the cross so that you could stand in the light and not have to worry about running away because you're exposed. Jesus was exposed in the darkness so that you wouldn't have to be. Jesus' light doesn't come to shame, it comes to save. What good news. Later in John, Jesus says this, John 12:46. Here's what I want you to take home if you're feeling this way. I have come into the world as a light, so that no one who believes in me should stay in darkness. Let me end with this. Tony Evans, one of the most well-known preachers in America, he writes this great point. This is good. Have you ever gotten up in the middle of the night to go to the restroom or the kitchen, failed to turn on the light, and miscalculated where the end of the bed is? That's a major miscalculation, especially if you don't have anything on your feet. Have you ever hit your pinky toe? It makes you want to lose your religion. That'll preach. Most of us have nightstands by our bed with a light. And we use that in the middle of the night because we want exposure so that we can see where we're going. Now let this sink in. A lot of us have lived our lives making one bad decision after another because we've been walking in darkness and we still want to know why our spiritual toes are always hurting. A lot of us have lived our lives making one bad decision after another because we've been walking in darkness and we still want to know why our spiritual toes are hurting. Here's what I want to end with. I need 2 volunteers to come up here. This isn't planned. 2 volunteers. Oh, my boy, come on up. I wouldn't expect anyone else. Oh, Peggy. All right. Come on up the stairs. Watch your step. Now, I need everyone to stay in their chair. Gilbert, let's hit the lights. Okay. Now, Peggy, Danny, why don't you come over here and follow this light? Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do push-ups. No, I'm joking. It's dark. I'm just going to walk around the stage. And if you stay physically close to me, you're in the light. I just made all the musicians nervous. Now, wherever I go, you just follow with me. Now, obviously, I'm not Jesus, But Jesus says he's the light of the world. If you stay close to Jesus, your path is lit. And you're surrounded in darkness. But your path is lit. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's give them a round of applause.
Very great.
All right, let's get those lights. We're going to be doing this in the... Oh, there we go. All right, let's give Peggy and Danny another round of applause. I get it. It's cheesy, but here's the deal. That's what Jesus is getting at. Are you actively following Jesus? Like right up next to him. He's the light of the world. We're going to head into a response time. We're going to sing. We're going to have prayer team up here. I want to encourage you. Maybe there's something dark in your life that you need prayer for. I would encourage you to allow the light of Jesus to shine down upon that. Let truth come into it. Let life. You know what sin wants? Sin is just like that bat, that cockroach. Sin thrives when it's hidden. It thrives in darkness. And the last thing that sin wants is for it to be exposed. Because when it's exposed, truth comes, joy comes, life comes. You will never find healing until you come out of hiding. You need to let light shine. So just come for prayer. No judgment. I need light. So let me pray for us, and then we'll head into a time of worship. Holy Spirit, the Father of lights, shine your light down in us. Lord, honestly, expose our sin. Lord, I just pray for the bridge. Lord God, you just bring life and joy. I have this picture that the bridge is kind of like this plant, this tree that's just skyrocketing with growth, and it's because the sun is hitting it and we're just receiving the light. God, may that be us. We just want to stand in your presence. Just want to receive from you. Come, Holy Spirit.